Sure.
Okay, so I was talking to Casey just a little bit and I said I had a really cool client story to share with you guys. And so I'm going to share that because it goes back to our water element that we were talking about last week.
Mhm.
So I worked on a client who had a kidney transplant.
Oh, wow.
So, fun fact, did you know that they leave the kidneys, the bad kidneys, in the body? They do not take them out.
Yes.
No clue.
I did that.
No clue. So they actually put the new kidney in front, like where the cesarean scar would be, like tucked
Okay.
off to the side. So with that comes generational trauma, depending on who you get your kidney from. Okay. So if you think about the lineage, you were already you in your grandmother's womb, right? Because it's 3 generations.
Yeah.
Okay. So not only do you carry the lineage from your grandmother, but you're also your mother because you were literally in each of those bodies. So this client had her mother's kidney, who it was begrudgingly given,
Oh no.
right? So that means the energy around it is, this is my kidney that you have, but it's always going to be my kidney. Right. And so that icky energy of like manipulation and control and just all of this stuff influencing the water line. Because if we pull the chart up, the water element is guilt, right? So not only does the client feel guilty now for have taken that kidney because it was life saving, like she didn't have another choice, but now she is faced with this overwhelming, like, in debt to her mother. So when we were working on it, I did a womb alignment because having that kidney stuffed right on top of the womb space shifts it in itself, and then also messes with digestion. So now you have the holding of emotions because we can't express them because we have to be so thankful that we received something, which gave her like diarrhea for 4 years straight.
Poor
So
thing.
just like massively like cannot like hold it together because she's just so much water element, so much water element. And so poor boundaries comes with um, an excess water. So because someone literally gave the kidney, it is a it's like a internal boundary that can never be corrected until we reconnect the lineage. I hope that's making sense. So overall, she was overly sensitive, really poor boundaries, having mood swings, having really bad cycles. So, like 2 weeks good, 2 weeks bad. Her womb was flipped backwards, which means she had really dark blood. And we're going to go through womb work more. So, this will make a little bit more sense, but really dark blood, brown blood. And so if your womb is tilted back, it actually has like a semi-permeable membrane with your bowels. So you can actually get like poop in your like womb space because of the permeability. And so with all of that going on, just way too much water in her system. So we focused on the earth element because right now she was having an excess water element. And so the earth would help bring her back into her own body. And we did a acknowledgement ceremony. So we held one hand on the kidney, one hand on the womb space because the womb is what was tilted out. And the kidney itself was angry. It was angry to have been like put here because it was the energy from the mother. And so we can do this in Aufstellung where it's like the second or third wife. So the second wife doesn't acknowledge the first wife, even though the first wife was there first. We do that with the organ as well. So I recognize that this organ was my mother's first. And now I am claiming it as mine because it was given to me and it is mine. So it is this boundary space that was needed to create a really healthy container around that. And after we were done with the session, the kidney literally sunk into the body. Like it didn't have this like bubble over top of it. It like sank down and her stomach was completely flat. So fun story. I had to share.
That's really interesting.
Amaya, stay here. It's really hard to understand.
It's okay. So yeah, I want you guys to start thinking of that when clients come in too. Like, what are they receiving from their generational pass down? Like, it might not be a legitimate organ system, but that energy that they have can flow down. And so that person had excess water, literally diarrhea, over emotional, not clear boundaries because her mom would always make those like comment digs. Like, well, it is my kidney, you owe me, da 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 da. Super duper manipulative, like horrendous. But we can correct that. And it goes back to that earth element, the proper boundaries of that space. So yeah. Okay. Questions of our training before I dive into our air element.
I'm still confused. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you go. I have a couple, so you might ask mine before I do.
I still had a question, and I went and I watched the 5 elements. I watched 2 of the videos. How do you know still when you say that if she has too much water, she needs earth? Or I know last week we talked that you have too much earth, you might need water. Why is it not? It looks like when the arrows go, yeah. So when I'm looking at earth,
Mhm.
and I have too much earth.
Too much excess. Okay. So you're feeling sluggish and heavy and not motivated.
Right. So how do I know what the opposite of that is? Since there's 5 sides, I'm still not understanding
so
which one you would need to
yeah.
balance it.
Yep. If you have too much of something, you need to bring in a control factor because control reduces it.
Okay.
And so what controls the earth is the space element.
Okay.
So if we feel heavy and monotonous and not motivated to do anything, we go over to our space element, which we haven't talked about, which is fine. But if we don't know what we want to do, space tells us what we need to do. What is the vision that we're working towards? Do you know what projects to prioritize? Because sometimes the earth element is in analysis paralysis. We have just too much crap going on and it's just too much. So then we just ground and we don't want to do anything. And so if we bring in the liver energy of like, do you know what your end goal is? Do you know what your timeline is? Do you know what to prioritize? It will actually control the earth, bring it down, and then you can feel more relaxed and just start doing the next thing.
Okay, so what if it's fire and you have too much fire?
So if
when you go straight down, you go the water and the air.
So excess, you always follow the control cycle. So if you are too much of something, you want to reduce it. Okay. And so whatever controls it is what you need to bring up. So if your fire is out of control, you need to douse it with water.
Okay.
Because you're adding water to cool your fire.
Okay.
You would never want to come in and use the earth because if we go backwards, it's an insulting cycle. Mm-hmm. So yes, you can add earth to your fire and it will put it out, but it's an insulting factor because you're adding this like heavy, monotonous energy and literally putting yourself out. It's like putting a heavy blanket on that you're never going to crawl out of. Versus the water, if you put water on fire, it creates steam and evaporates and cools it down without depleting everything. Does that make sense?
Sort of.
I
I'm
think
still gonna have to turn it around in my head because I can't, maybe I'm just not asking the question right. So let
I
me,
think if we write it in a different format, let me see if I can get a pen. Because I think I understand what you're having. I think the arrows are just a little confusing for you. So we can do it in a different format. We can do it more linear. That might
okay.
be easier. Okay.
How do you bring in more like of that control? So like if you have earth, too much earth, you'll need to bring in space. Like how do you invite that in?
Give me an example. It's always easier to like do the example timeline. Kind of like I feel
So
really angry all the time. So
mhm.
I'm going to bring in water and I'm going to check in with my emotions. What is the issue behind my anger? Am I not being heard? Am I not being connected with? Am I
How do you invite the water in though? Is it just like checking in with yourself and like doing asanas that are in the water element? Okay.
yeah, and you can ask like
Simulate.
you can ask the or the water meridian questions. So say anger is such an easy one to go. I am so effing angry at the entire world. I need to cool myself down. Okay, well, let's evaluate, why am I angry? I'm angry because my boundaries were violated. Okay, how does that make you actually feel? It makes me feel vulnerable and unsafe, right? And so now we're checking into this emotional intelligence place, and we can find nourishment in that.
Okay.
We can go, okay, I'm actually feeling violated, and this is a sensation that I have had in the past. How did I deal with it in the past? Did I numb out? Did I explode? Did I, self-sabotage? What is it? And we can bring usually the asana postures in for that specific emotion, right? We want to cool the body down, and the way to cool the body down is to slow down, do the breath work, especially that like the in for 4, hold for 4, out for 8. Just something that like really cools them down. Complete belly breath, cellular breathing, and we'll go over some of these breath techniques too in the next sessions. But cellular breath is probably one of the most amazing ones that I've done. You take a breath and you start circulating it through the whole body, and you get smaller and smaller and smaller, kind of like a yoga nidra practice, but you're trying to tap all the way down into the smallest atom of the system. It's really cool to do. So we'll do some of those. Okay, I'm going to try to get this linear graph done. Okay, so earth, water, fire, air, space. Okay, so let me stop sharing my screen. Okay, so if we do it on a linear path, earth controls water, water controls fire, fire controls air, air controls space. It has to move that way. If we move it, let me get a different color. If we move it any way backwards, it's called insulting cycle. So we cannot go backwards. We can look backwards to find how to move forward. So if we have too much water, so if our water is flooding the river, we need to create higher banks. So we can look backwards to see what we need to move it forward. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So then the support cycle gets a little bit harder because you're actually jumping. Like you're jumping 4 sections. So earth supports air. And then water supports space. So like you're doing these massive jumps for support. And that's why we don't do a reverse support. Because if we do a reverse support, it's a shortcut. Like if we were to reverse this, if we were to bring air to support our earth, it's a shortcut. We will people please to find safety and security. We don't want to do that. We don't want to put ourselves in an excess category to find safety and stability. Just like this one. We don't want to have poor boundaries to feel love, which is a lot of times, especially with like young women, right? Like they will have poor boundaries. And that's why like there's such a bad rap, right? Like you give your body away. That is the boundary. You're giving your body away to find love. We don't want to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, I always feel like example driven options are better than me trying to explain it, because sometimes it's so complicated, and that's why we do each section so individualized, and then the flow a little bit better together. So
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, I've got it. It finally clicked. And then I'm like, okay, no, it didn't click. Let me watch it again. Okay, I've got it. No, not yet.
Yeah, when I first started doing this, I think the first year of practice, I honestly think I was doing people's imbalances in an insulting way. Like, I truly think as a practitioner, I fixed everybody by insulting everybody. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, I was like, oh shit, like I have been doing this so backwards, like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. So don't feel bad. It took me my India training plus a whole year of working with clients to like figure out that I was doing it wrong.
Then you have your epiphany and you're like, wow, this is so much better.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I'm still having epiphanies on my own charts. Like I just had an epiphany with the space element, and I'd probably have to look at my journal to figure out what that epiphany was, but it had something to do with like the space element and the water. Like I think, like, I don't know what it is and I won't get into it, but I'll reread my journal, and when we get to space, I'll have information to share for you guys. Okay, Casey, do you have other questions before I know you got your hands full?
Yeah, he's fighting. He's like, you put me in bed all last week, and now that moment he's putting me, he's like fighting it hard. And yeah. I have a couple questions because I finally printed out my meridian charts, and I just wanted to like make sure I'm like marking the same thing, the right things with things.
For sure.
Poor kid. It was like the first one I want to know for like sure. So I was like talking, my like parents and family asked me about this, and I was explaining. They're like, well, what is a meridian? And I was like, yes. Well, I know what a meridian is, but I can't tell you.
Yes.
So if you could give me a quick definition to write down, I could like put it in.
So a meridian is an energetic channel that flows through the body, and that is what the chi travels on. I always also reference it as it is what the acupuncturist uses to needle the client. And so I think I touched base on this maybe in the first class of like why Thai yoga therapy is really great to do with acupuncture and not just acupuncture alone. And it's because we're opening up the entire energetic channel for the chi or the energy to flow through.
Okay, see, that's what I said, and they just didn't get it. So I was like, okay, you just don't get it. I'm not wrong. You just don't get it.
Yeah, it's hard for people to understand that we have energetic channels. And I will say this little last part, the energy meridians run on the fascia of the body.
Mhm.
And so that's why when you have surgery, it's so hard to recover if they cut through the fascia. And that's why they try to cut parallel to it, so they're not cutting through it.
Yeah.
They just thought like fascia didn't matter, like way back. They're just like, what is this? The sheath that covers the entire body. That's literally where the energy channels run through. It is the most powerful thing. So that's like why gua sha works really well. And we'll go over a little bit of gua sha. Like, obviously, I can't certify you guys in it, but it's still a really cool technique to dabble in. And I'm all about, you don't really need certifications for certain things. So feel free to dabble on yourselves and family and get used to it. But when you gua sha, it's called chasing chi. So you're literally gua shaing the meridian line and following the chi and the dark lines wherever it goes until it no longer flows. So
That's really
yeah, I use gua sha all the time. It saves my hands, especially on certain clients, because you can like acupressure it to death, or you can just gua sha it 10 times and you're like, great, moving on, time saver. So I use it for like arms, legs, shoulders, neck, things like that. A little bit of, and then I always show clients how to do their TMJ with a gua sha tool.
Yeah, I had a PT with gua sha on my shoulder, and now I know what they're doing.
Yeah, I always say gua sha was here before Grassin, because Grassin is the Western terminology. So that's what PTs and chiropractors are trained in.
Cool.
So yeah.
I
What
have
else
more
you got?
questions.
Yeah, what else you got?
The earth element, when we're working on meridians, that's waist down, correct?
Correct. You'll see it go all the way up. So like it'll go through the stomach, through the breast tissue, and up into the face.
But we only focus waist down or hips
I'll
down.
say we diagnose waist down.
Okay.
If there is a small distinction, like, yes, we are going to work that meridian, the stomach line and spleen line specifically, we will work the whole line all the way up. But for diagnostic purposes, we diagnose in the lower body, because that's where you really feel the blockages. There are meridian lines. I'd have to pull up that chart that
I'm looking at it now.
I'm trying to think of because I know there are certain, yeah, so if you look at the charts, the lines will go out to the arms. We ignore those. So
Yeah.
you want to put like a big red X on the arms for stomach and spleen. Yeah, we ignore that, but we definitely focus all the way up through the sinuses. We just don't do the arms.
I'm voiding that out as we speak. And then when we were talking about the earth element, you said that the stomach is the masculine and the spleen is the feminine.
Correct.
On water and the fire, is there a masculine and feminine one on each of those?
Yep. So anytime it's a masculine, it's the yang line. So that means the outside edge of the body. So the furthest outside edge. So bladder, which runs the backside of the body, is going to be the masculine, and kidney that runs the inside of the shin and thigh will be the yin, or the feminine.
Okay. And then for the air.
Yep. And then for fire, you have triple heater that runs the back of the arm, which is masculine, as well as small intestine, which is masculine, because triple heater goes from the ring finger, I believe it's ring, might be middle, might be misquoting myself. And then small intestine runs from the pinky. And then the yin, you have the heart protector, which runs down the center of the line, and then heart, which runs down the pinky on the inside.
Okay.
So any line that faces medial or towards the middle of the body, that's your yin or feminine lines.
Okay. I'm writing all these down, and I'm to the point with all this where I'm like, I'm just gonna trust the process, and by the end of this, I'll know it.
Yes, we will
'Cause
go
right
through
now,
it multiple times. And if you
Wow.
guys really want to have a fun day in the studio, I will bring the washable markers and baby wipes, and you guys can draw up and down on each other because that was part of my training.
I love that. I'll bring the markers.
Okay, great. I just remember sitting in a ginormous yoga studio in Brussels, and everybody was like half naked, just getting the meridians drawn all over themselves, up the faces and down the arms. And like, it was just ridiculously hilarious,
I love it.
but very helpful, I will say. And I will
And
go through a meridian nidra with you guys as well. Probably, we have a lot of different techniques that I'm going to still be pulling into this, but the meridian nidra for me was really helpful because as you guys are laying in Shavasana, I am telling you to imagine the line on every single point, bringing in every chakra color, bringing you all the way out to each edge of the lines, like termination and start points. So that can be really helpful practice. What else you got, Casey? Anything?
nope, those were all the ones I had so far.
Cool. Cool.
I was just excited that I had them.
Can we use glitter markers?
Oh my God, that would be epic.
Like we could create like glitter paint.
Right?
That would be so epic.
I'd come home and Ren would be like, "Mommy, I
Yeah.
paint."
Yes.
Go for it, kiddo.
Yes. Okay, well, let's dive in. I'm going to save our puja for like our closing meditation, just because I think we have a bit of stuff to cover, possibly. I say that, but then we'll probably like be fine. Okay, let me share my screen. We're going to start with the meridian charts. Okay, I can't see them. There they are. Okay, so we're going to start large intestine first because this one is actually really fun. I did a Ananda Mandala meditation way back. I don't know if you guys have done that, but it's a breath where it's like in, out, in, out, in, out really fast. And you go through all of the 8 chakras, 7 chakras, Jesus. And by the time I was done, my whole large intestine meridian was lit up and crossing over to the termination point. And it's a control factor. So large intestine is our control factor. Are you a control freak? Are you a perfectionist? Like, what needs to be in order? So when we look at this meridian, it goes from the opposite nostril and it crosses over the front of the, like the underneath the nose, and then it crosses down the cheek and then down the side of the neck, and then it will transverse the top of the shoulder. And you kind of can't see it, but it goes right on that heavy dark edge, and then it runs down towards the pointer finger. So one of my teachers always would say, this is our discernment finger. This is our choice finger. So if you are reaching for a box of chocolates, which one do you want? And so that's how we remember large intestine is on the pointer finger, because you're like, I want that. I'm choosing that. So that is that. And then you'll also notice that there's this section that comes down the back of the leg. I don't diagnose in that space because the kidney meridian runs really, really close to that line. And you can see how it connects literally into the kidney space. So for diagnostic purposes of the air element, we diagnose in the arms. So you'll feel the gummy bears in the arms. And I'm not saying that you can't utilize the lower body if you have a diagnosis in the arm. Just know that the large intestine is really close to the kidney. So it's kind of hard to like differentiate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then when we go to the lung line, the lung is very center of the throat. So stomach ran the side of the throat, lung runs directly up, right? The esophagus. and then it will transverse across the top of the shoulder on the front of the body, and it goes out to the thumb. And when we talk about the, I gotta pull my chart back up. When we talk about the lung meridian, come on. This is our vitality. This is our attachment. So like toddlers suck their thumbs, right? It's an attachment. It helps them like feel controlled. So that's how I remember lung meridian goes to the thumb, like a toddler sucking their thumb for comfort. Like, what do you feel attached to? What do you feel like you can't let go of? How's your vitality been? Are you a perfectionist to a fault? All of these types of questions, they also overlap the large intestine a little bit. So like the control and the perfectionism overlap into large intestine, but large intestine is specifically decision making. And the lung, I attach that more to the attachment. So like codependency, not being able to let go of material things, and the scattered feeling. If we are so scattered, it is unsafe to not be attached to something. So then if we look at that chart, come on. If we look at the charts, you'll notice they also go down into the digestive space. So when you see these gray marks on the body, this is usually where people experience pain, like referred pain. So if we look at this section, this is right underneath the gallbladder on the right side, and then this is stomach on the left side. So if people are attached to an emotion, they're going to hold that in their stomach area, and they might have really tender spots up in the top of their digestion. If they're having a problem making decisions, they're probably going to have discomfort down by the hip crease. And then when we went to the stomach meridians, you would have seen here. So the solid line is the is the spleen meridian. There we go. And so that's satisfaction. Like, where are you not feeling satisfaction? And when we do this technique in the Thai yoga bodywork, we will actually cup the belly button, hold it all the way down for 10 breaths, and then we'll pop off of it. And a lot of people will say that they literally feel like something came out of their system. So like an addiction, a craving, anything that they've been really holding on to as a coping mechanism will be sucked out of that space. And then you'll see this little tiny divot here, which is stomach meridian. Obviously, the stomach is literally right there. I think gallbladder is over on this side. Stomach, liver. Yeah, it's just stomach over here. So this little tiny piece is going to be more towards the solar plexus. And when you start feeling different bodies, it's going to feel like a hard piece of candy just stuck in there. And so then I usually ask them like about their boundaries and whatnot. You've got one last section on the back of the body for lung. And this is our, a lot of times when we are doing the back body and we do a full body butterfly press, we'll get a pop here. And that is just recognition of them not letting go of the control. Gosh, where's my chart? Let me pull this up again. I don't know why I'm having problems with my screen share today. So like, are you holding that perfectionism to a fault really high up in the lung space? And so when we pop it, they'll feel this like overwhelming release of like, oh God, I can let that go. So, okay, let's talk about the imbalance of the air element. So when we try to balance the air element, this is part of our heart chakra, and we're going to do a heart meditation as part of our yoga asana today. So if someone is feeling very loving and caring and compassionate towards others, they are really secure with themselves. They can be loving and caring for a partner, even if that partner hurt them, because they are fully secure with knowing what they need and what they want, and they love themselves. Okay. Let me see if I can think of an example. A betrayal of some sort. So say your partner betrayed your trust, and you can see them and you can love them and you can be compassionate towards them, but you are not allowing that betrayal to like sink your heart space. You're not going to be a martyr. You're not going to self-sabotage. You're not going to be lacking empathy. You are just going to hold a neutral space for them that doesn't overcrowd your own boundary space. It's really hard to do. It's almost like compartmentalizing. And the more you work on it, the less it will feel like a compartmentalization and less numb, and more of, wow, this is a really healthy response to someone crossing my boundaries, because I can still hold love and care for them without it affecting how I respond to myself. Okay, so if someone ends up being codependent, overly helpful, and people pleaser, and this is usually what I see with clients, I usually don't see the deficient side of things, but it's because if you lack empathy, you're not usually coming for Ty because you don't care. So most clients are going to show the codependence, overly helpful, and people pleaser. And the reason is, from a young age, they learned that if they are the good child, it creates safety and security. It's that insulting cycle that happens when we flip this arrow. If I help mom, then I will get praise. I will get love. It's like a very unhealthy attachment style. If I give of myself, I receive love, which then also influences this space. So if we are coping with excess air into the earth, and this is why we can't get ahead of ourselves. I'm going to hopefully not make this confusing. We have to make sure we balance the lowest chakra first, because I'm going to show you why this gets hard. Because if you went straight to the air element and you were like, I see your imbalance, I see you're overly helpful and you're people pleasing, and that's great. Look, you're helping your water element, you're supporting your water element, but you're not, because you are blowing so much air on that water that you're drying it out. And what happens when you start moving that air through, you can potentially numb yourself out and end up with really poor boundaries. So that's where we get these these poor boundaries, essentially addictive, where I have to give my body to receive love. So we cannot go straight to the air element to balance. We have to go to the earth, because if we get the earth imbalance, it will properly control the water. And so even if someone still has a tendency to be excessive, hopefully they have enough earth to where that doesn't affect the water element. Like, hopefully they have enough edges on their river that if that water blows, it's not going to take that water anywhere but where it's supposed to go. Okay, so then I see this a lot. So the martyr, I don't necessarily see it in younger generations, but I see it in the older generations, like my grandmother. Like, they will martyr themselves to get sympathy. Like, oh, poor me, I did everything. And it's, again, their way to receive love and attention. Because if they were strong, independent, and able to vocalize what they need, because this is going into this over control of the throat chakra, If you have too much air, you over control your space, which means your voice is low. So they're going to sit in the background and they're going to go, oh, poor me, poor me. I am so helpful, poor me. I don't get anything I need, poor me. And it's like, well, if you didn't martyr yourself and you just showed up in a loving, compassionate way, your space would be intact and you would be able to communicate what else you needed, which would then help support the root chakra. So you're starting to see how everything goes back to the root. We can't jump forward. We can't try to go. We can bring awareness for the client, because I usually pick out 3 elements for the client, like the ones that had the most gummy bears in them. I'll pick out the top 3 misalignments that I'm finding in the body. And 9 out of 10 times, we always go to the earth. It might be water, but we are never going to be working fire, air, or space for first sessions. It's either going to be earth or water. We can bring awareness to their imbalances so they at least have the vision, that space element of where they're going next, but we can't jump ahead. Okay, so then let's talk about this deficient category, because this is the category that you're going to run into in public. These are the people who are not doing their healing work. They are critical, they are intolerant, they just don't want to be a team player, essentially. And so when you encounter that, it's stealing air. And so if you're feeling burned out, it's because they are literally depleting you, meaning you have to give more. And that's what pulls on this fire element up here. So if someone is depleting your air element and you're trying to not be depleted, so you're going to give more, you're actually insulting that fire element. You're getting burned out just to stay in a neutral category with that person who's like stealing your air. Does that make sense?
Makes me think of certain.
Yeah. So that looks like if you have a really big win, like, oh my God, I made $100,000 or whatever. And they'll be like, oh, that's great. You could do better. What? Like, can I celebrate first? Or the antisocial person who will try to draw people away from their friends and family to isolate them, like an abuser category almost. I shouldn't say almost, legitimately. So they will make you antisocial. And then if you're a person who has like a positive, upbeat attitude, there's always going to be like something that they can complain about. And they will not let you like revel in the positive. Now, if you're that person or your client is that person, it gets really hard to communicate with them because they're going to push back so effing hard. It's like, why are you here? Because the moment you point out how critical they are, so like, say I'm going through their entire chart and they're just like, well, I don't think that's true. That's because of this. They're giving excuse after excuse after excuse. Then it's kind of like, okay, thanks for coming in, but like, I'm not going to waste my energy on trying to fix your or help you see your imbalances because you're so critical. You lack any empathy even for yourself. So I will tell you that you're probably not going to run into this category, but you will have to identify it for your client if they're in an abusive relationship. And even if it's not quote unquote abusive, you'll still need to point out those tendencies. And sometimes it's like the mother relationship, the father relationship, or like a critical friend that they've had since high school. And it's just like, if one of the tactics I like to use with the client is, can you give that person a different role in your life to where they're not stealing your air anymore? So say you have a really critical mother. Can you stop expecting them to act as a mother and give them a different category? Because if you have a different expectation of that relationship, their criticalness is not going to have as big of an effect on you. because, you know, we don't want to cut out our family, not necessarily, right? Like, we never want to do that. Like, sometimes it is necessary for sure. But if I can look at, I'll just use my mom. If I can look at my mom and if she's really critical, I can just be like, her role is to ensure my safety. And the way she's doing that is not in my highest self. So I'm going to give her a new role and she is my oh shit person. That's it. I cannot bring my wins. I cannot bring my fails. I cannot bring whatever. I can bring my oh shits. So just assign that person a different category in your life or in your client's life. Okay. And with that, it goes right to our challenge, grief. If you have to assign someone else a different role in your life, you're going to have a lot of grief. If you have to, I like to say, how can you authentically show up for yourself in the most loving and compassionate way? A lot of times that comes with grief. If we have to cut ties with certain people, if we have to cut ties with certain habits, with different loves, with different whatever, grief will come into that. And the only way that we can counterbalance that grief is with self-acceptance and love. And so if we go back to that kidney story at the beginning, that person was experiencing a lot of grief within her own system. She had severe depression for 20 years. And it's because it was this person who should love unconditionally and sacrifice unconditionally was not doing that. And so there was grief in that space. So if we can bring self-acceptance of, I didn't choose for my kidneys to go bad. I didn't choose this. If I just accept that, like, I willingly took this kidney to save my life, I surrender to that sensation, I can live with that sensation. I can let the grief go of knowing that the relationship with my mother will never be the same. And that has to be grieved. That's really important for the client. Like, allow them to grieve that and call it out. There's a couple other activities that you do with the air element because it's heart-centered. So it's a gratitude practice. A lot of times if people are critical of themselves, that might be the only imbalance that you see. They might not be critical of other people, but they're really critical on themselves. Gratitude practice. What are you grateful for? What self-acceptance or forgiveness activity can you do? What surrendering activity you can do? And when we talk about surrendering, I automatically think about the yin postures. How can you surrender into this posture and not have to control it? How can I get so mellow that I don't have to be perfect? I just have to be perfect enough for me. And so we focus on chest openers, literally opening up the heart space to find vulnerability. In the yin world, that's going to be forward folds, which I don't like the forward fold. That was in part of my manual. If I had to redo this chart, I probably wouldn't do the forward fold or the child's pose. But it's trying to get the surrender, the bow forward of I let it go. But what I prefer is to lay over a bolster and open my space. Like, that is going to be my go-to. So if I could change this chart, that's what I would do. I would also add the cat-cow, right? The one arm up, one arm down, really opening. And then also any shoulder squeezes. So like if you're reaching behind, interlacing the fingers and pulling the shoulders back, any of those types of things to really surrender in. But honestly, I use one thing in this, and it's lay over the bolster and open the heart. That's my go-to posture. I don't use anything else. Now, if someone needs a little bit of a kick in the butt, then we can go into those yang postures. So the fish. Why am I drawing a blank on fish?
It's like a back bend, but you're laying down.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Yep. Okay. That was, oh, we'll go through that one. But yeah, essentially you stick your forearms behind you and lift the chest up. There we go. Which is the shoulder squeezes. Warrior one is up because your head, your heart is forward. And one of my other ones that I really enjoy is thread the needle because you're opening the chest up. I think the space element is very similar when it comes to, yeah, neck and shoulder openers. So a lot of cross traffic goes between the space element and the air element. But for the most part, we're just laying over a bolster, grieving and letting everything go. Let's see, anything else? I don't think so. I think that is it. What time do we got?
8.
Perfect. Let's take a break until 8, and then we'll come back and we'll do our asana postures. And then I want to do a heart cleansing meditation. Because I think this is going to be really good. And we're going to talk about Casey's session that she had because she's going to be our guinea pig a little bit for balancing. So I'll meet you back at 8.
Great.
All right, so we're gonna go through just a couple of the asana postures just for Melissa's sake, because I know you don't have a yoga background. And then I want to make sure you have a bolster or a couple beach towels. I don't know what your props are, Melissa.
I have a bolster. Let me go get
Oh,
it though.
great,
I got-
fantastic.
Let me go grab it.
Because I'm gonna do a heart surrendering meditation for you guys, and it's also going to, I guess I should, oh man, there's gonna be a long break. I forgot to pause the recording. I'm also going to do a, how do I want to say this? It goes behind the heart, and we'll talk about it with Casey's evaluation after this, but it's going to be focused on cleaning out almost like a wound behind the heart space. And so you can do these types of meditations with your clients when you work on them. I usually do them either in Shavasana when I'm finishing my puja, I'll wrap it into the puja space. Or if I'm working on their head, neck, and shoulders, it's a great place to get them into a meditative spot. So I want to just touch base on some of these like different meditation techniques, because you'll be able to like run with them and just allow spirit to guide you with your language. This is just
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna go get my big pillow.
Casey's like, I'm going all in for relaxation today.
Okay. What else do I need? I have my bolster, I have my blouse.
Just bolster. I think the bolster will be fine with the props that we have, because I'm just gonna run through the yoga postures, just so you can feel them in your own body and feel those meridians, and then we'll kind of go from there. So yeah. Okay, so one of my absolute favorite things to do with both fire and air element is called the popcorn fingers. And so it literally looks like you're on your hands and knees. You flip one hand backwards. This way, there we go. And it allows you to kind of do a self massage. So I'm just using that C shape again. And I'm, oh my God.
Are
Oh,
you
yeah, my heart protector meridian is on fire. Okay. So I'm running up the front or the middle of that line, which is our fire element, but you can run on any of the lines. You can do the line that goes from the thumb up, which is the lung line. You can do the pinky side, which is the heart, or you can go directly up the center, which is heart protector. So you can do your own oh my God. You can do your own self-massage in this space. And then one of my favorite things is I like to pick up each finger and just let it pop down. Kind of just like waking it up. And then after we do that, we just gently kind of allow the wrist to be rolled around on. And then we would do the other side. So we just flip the wrist back. And then again, you can massage each meridian all the way up. You can even go up into the top of the arm. Oh my God. And then you'll go into that thumb side if it feels good for you. Thumb side is our lung line. That's what we just learned about today. So if this line is sore, our vitality might be low. We might be feeling attached to something that's not healthy for us. If you're on the outer edge by the pinky, that's small. Nope, that's heart. So what are we, what emotions are we feeling? And then down the center is heart protector. What are we protecting ourselves from? Okay, you can do the popcorn fingers. Just lift each one and pop it down. And then just kind of sit on top of that wrist and let it kind of roll around. And so on the chart, you know, it talked about child's pose, which is surrendering forward. One of my favorite add-ons to do would be the puppy pose. So allow yourself to inch those fingers forward, and then you'll feel a nice stretch underneath the armpits. So this goes back into a little bit of the fire, because the fire goes into armpit with the heart protector. But if you ground those fingertips, you should be able to feel the large intestine and the lung line as well. And if you're up in that puppy pose, it's a great posture because you're stretching out the stomach. So now we have an earth element present, and we're dipping into the low back, which is water. So it's a pretty big posture to incorporate everything. And you can press the tops of the feet into the earth, press the hands into the earth, and like almost feel like you're pulling the glutes back to get some fire. And then you can relax that, prayer the hands together, hands behind the head, and then press down through the elbows. And if you want an even bigger release of surrender, if you have blocks, and if you don't, it's okay. It's just an option. You'll actually learn this posture in the Thai technique. But you allow the clients to rest on top of those blocks so that the heart can surrender deeper into the floor. Because again, we're trying to open up the chest and like get that moving. Oh. This one might be a little bit more geared towards space element because it gets into higher neck and shoulders, but I'm fine allowing you guys to intermix these postures. It's just whatever's accessible to your client. Okay, and then we'll come out of that. If you have blocks, keep them by. Camel posture, right? It's such a big one. So camel, you can be high on your knees and you reach back to either one heel or a block. And sometimes I'm just not flexible. I'm putting that block on my heel literally, or like bolster across the back of my heels. And you can just do one, or you can do both. Not flexible enough today. And you can hang out. So this is going to be yang postures. Takes a lot of effort to stay in them. And then whenever you're ready, you can come out of that. Next posture is that fish posture that I literally couldn't think of, but you can do it in two ways. You can do it in a yang way and you can do it in a yin way. So if you're going to do it in a yin way, keep your blocks close by. But yang, you just pop the hands behind you, lift up through the heart. If you want to incorporate a little bit of a yin, you can grab a block and just find the spine and kind of help it. It's a little bit of an assisted yang, so it's not as aggressive, but I definitely wouldn't be putting my client in this for an extended period of time. But if they need a yang exercise and it's not accessible for them to be in, you can do a prompt posture. What else? Shoulder squeeze. So we did bridge in the fire because it worked on the core. Same thing, you can go into bridge, interlace those fingers, squeeze the shoulders, like really squeeze and get on top of them. And that's going to open up the chest. Making sure that the throat is elongated. Grounding through the feet. See if you can relax the glutes. Pressing up through the hips. Glutes relax. Engage that low abdominal. And then just mosey yourself down. Woo. Okay, last one is the wheel posture. Most clients are not gonna have this accessible, but you flip your hands above the shoulders, walk the heels in, and then just press up. And they can stay there as long as it feels good, and then just have them roll back. Woo. Oh my goodness, that's intense. Okay. Why don't you bring your knees into your chest, give a little rock side to side. Whew. And then I want you to grab your bolster, and we're gonna do that heart opening fish posture. That is such a yin yummy posture. So you can do a couple different levels. You can just go straight out. You can do feet butterflied. And if that is too much, put a block underneath and allow that client to have some elevation as they open. Doesn't matter what level they want to be at. Just allow yourself to find a spot. And then I'm gonna move myself and we're gonna do a meditation. All right, so as you are laying with that heart open, I want you to feel surrender. And I'm just going to be silent for just a couple of minutes. I want you to listen to this song and see if you can let it speak to the emotional body of yourself. This is meant to help heal. It's supposed to help remove guilt, shame, and it allows clients to help breathe. So just for a couple of minutes, just listen to this and then we'll go into the meditation. Sorry, please forgive. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive. Thank you. I love you. Sorry, please forgive. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive. Thank you. I love you. 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 I'm sorry, please forgive. Thank you. I love you. Sorry, please forgive. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive. So allow yourself to tap into the heart space. Specifically, the space that sits behind the heart. The things that we might not even be aware of. Just imagine that there is a safe door behind the heart, And we have the key to open that safety deposit box. And as we get ready to open that safety deposit box of all the things that have hurt us, that we hold in, that we're trying to control, just notice if there's any emotions that might come up as we prepare to open that box. It could be fear, it could be shame, it could be anxiety, or another emotion completely different. Just allow that emotion to come to the surface and see if you can surrender into knowing that you are safe and loved, and you are in a container, that you are being fully held. As we prepare to open that box, bring that layer of light from puja into your space. Clear any negativity, clear any unwanted spirit. Allow yourself to be fully protected, knowing that your guides are always around you. They have never left you. They are here right now as you get ready to open this container. Allowing yourself to open the door behind your heart. And just allow yourself to breathe into that for a minute. Bring that energetic healing into that space. The awareness. You don't have to look in that space if it doesn't feel safe. But just allow yourself to have opened the door. And just like a wound needs caring, that's what we're going to do today. We are going to irrigate this wound, and we're going to bring that water element in. So just allow the water to flow through the back of the heart space, down the bladder meridians. They run parallel to the spine. And just allow that water to rush through that space. Maybe it's quickly, maybe it's gentle. Just allow that to just find that fresh water, allowing whatever debris, whatever hurt, whatever is hiding in that space, allow it to just be gently washed away. And as that water continues to clear that space behind the heart, it allows us to see what we might not have been able to see before. Maybe we pick up that piece that was hidden. Maybe we just see it downstream. We just notice as that space becomes clearer and clearer. And as that space becomes more clear, we're going to just allow ourselves to put a little barrier up so that water can go around this space as we fill it up. So thinking about the boundaries that might need to be put in place so we don't have to hide from this anymore. Think about what our needs would be if we didn't have to hide from this, or we weren't ashamed of it, or there was no guilt behind it, or grief. And as we bring that earth element into this space, it creates a nice wall of protection, knowing that we are capable of handling anything that comes our way. We no longer have to put it behind our heart for safety. And as that earth comes in, we bring the air element with it. We allow ourselves to find forgiveness. We allow ourselves to focus in on love. We allow ourselves to feel fully taken care of in whatever capacity that looks like for you. And as we continue to fill that space, the heart becomes lighter. It's no longer having to hide whatever it is that was behind the heart. We just allow the overflowing love and kindness and joy to come in behind the heart. And as we overflow the space, we can allow ourselves to just toss that key aside. You don't have to lock this space up because we brought the earth in. The earth will keep it safe. The earth will keep it grounded. And as we cover up that space with the earth, we put a Band-Aid or the covering over, and we just allow that water to roll over that space one more time. It's no longer an empty hole. It has been filled with love and joy, compassion for ourselves, allowing that earth energy to keep a solid seal on that space so that when we move through the heart energy, it is always radiating forward. We are never hiding behind, but we are always showing up as our authentic, loving, caring self, capable of giving and receiving without expectation, fully showing up aligned with this energy. Feeling that bladder meridian on the back of the body. The water just cleanses that space. We just allow ourselves to feel in, just noticing how light we feel as we continue to surrender into this space. And just draw your attention to the front of the heart. That expansiveness we feel. The energy as we almost imagine us out in the sun, absorbing that sunshine, that warmth. Because we are allowing our light source to shine through, moving throughout the entire body and out into the room, connecting into our guides and sending them gratitude for taking this protection. Sending gratitude for them picking up whatever it was that we allowed to wash out, to be irrigated, to not return. And we just take a nice deep full breath all the way in. All the way out. And we just start moving fingers and toes. We just allow ourselves to come back into this space. And we just take a couple moments. There's absolutely no rush to come back into this space. Whenever you're ready to arrive back on camera, that's when we will restart. All right. How are we feeling after that?
Good.
Pretty good. I think I could have laid there for a while.
Yes.
That's a good stretch.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And I will link this song. It's called, let me see if I can share it in the chat. Share copy song link. It's one of my favorite ones to send to clients. It is an Hawaiian mantra, and it literally means stand by. Wrote it down today. It helps us remove shame, guilt, haunting memories of how you could move through things a little bit differently. So even though it says, I forgive, what does it say? Man, I already forgot. Brain farting. There we go. I love you. I forgive you. I'm sorry. It's not necessarily talking towards another person. It can be talking towards our inner selves. So that critical piece of us, any emotion that we feel that's a negative emotion, like guilt or shame, it's like, I see you, I love you, I forgive you, you're accepted type energy. And so we never want to eradicate those feelings. We just want to be able to sit with them. So, all right, Casey, you ready to be our test client?
Yeah,
Dissect your meridians a little bit from our session.
let's do it.
All right, let me pull up your notes that I took. Okay. Let's see if I can sideline this. Okay, so Casey had a session over the weekend, which was super fun. And we touched base on her bladder meridian, which is behind the calf, her large intestine, small intestine, and her womb space as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about the bladder meridian. So Casey, you said I have full authority to kind of.
Yeah, I'm an open book. Melissa's gonna learn all about my meridians anyway.
Okay. So Casey has sexual abuse history in her past that happened around 7 or 8. And Casey, do you want to talk about that space that you felt behind the heart at a young age? Like what that felt like?
Yeah, I have like a pinch in the back of my like in my like kind of right behind my heart. And I didn't even tell you this. There was a point in my life where like there was like an inch of that space that was numb to the touch. Like completely, like it just was like pinched, closed off. And I just remember like it's always hurt. And I have been in PT on and off my whole life, and even like physical therapists haven't able, but like I haven't been able to like pinpoint it or find it. And, like I'll ask my husband, like rub my back, and he can't find it, and Rael just like that. And when she was like, "Is there a spot you like want to address?" I didn't even think about it because one of those things I just live with, you know. I just and then she hit it, and I was like, "That." I felt that forever.
Yes. And then we kind of pinged into the abuse trauma is when you actually first started to feel it, correct? Like that 7-8-year-old.
Yeah, I don't really remember it until, so when I think of like the timeline of my life, I base it off of places we lived because I was a military kid, and the abuse happened when we were in Italy, and then we moved from Italy, and I don't remember having that pain until like the next spot we lived, and that was Virginia.
So when we work with clients, it's important to get the timeline of their quote unquote injuries. Because just like in the Aufstellung grid, which I'll talk about maybe in a future session, but it's all about making sure we arrange the trauma in order so that it can be fully seen. So a lot of layering will go on top of it. And so if we don't have the proper timeline of when people have certain things, it goes back to that earth element. We have to go back to the beginning to understand where they are now.
Yeah.
And so we went all the way back to that bladder meridian right behind the heart space. And that meditation that we did today definitely can help clear that more. And then Casey would also do the asanas, such as those forward folds that were the bladder. Because if there's a numbness in that space, we would want to bring more water into it. We would want to bring more flow into it. And I'm just gonna much better when I have a whiteboard. And so we'll go through some of these in person too. We'll have case studies that we'll do in person. But let's map Casey's out right here. So I uploaded a star chart to the portal today, just before class started, and it will literally have earth, water, air, fire, and space. And when I see you guys on Wednesday, I'm going to be giving you your homework that you have for when I'm gone to Morocco. But this is what I use for every single client. I will go through and I will mark the deficiency or the excessive category. So right off the bat, I already know her water is going to be blocked because of that numbness that she talked about. We talked a little bit about the earth. The earth actually is really stable because Casey is in a really loving relationship that allows her to feel safe and secure. And so the earth, I always put like a balanced line there. The earth is fine. And so we need to work in that water element. Okay.
Yeah, I'm muddy. My banks are muddy.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to increase the feeling. We want to get the water up. So we want to not have that pile of mud at the bottom of the river so the fish can swim again. And so she's going to do forward rolls. She's going to do meditation practices that are like a yoga nidra practice, because that is all about flowing. And then if you look at the chart of the water element, the breath practices that you want to do for water would be the complete breath cycle. So that cellular breath that I was talking about. And I will link my favorite meditation for each of these breath practices. It's from my mindful yoga therapy training. They walk you through them so beautifully that I don't do it justice when I explain it. So I'm just going to leave it in our group chat for you guys to check out over this weekend. So complete breath or cellular breath practice. Okay. And then we went into the small intestine for Casey because it is the shoulder blade. So when we were just around the bladder meridian, let me see if I can pull up these charts. That's not the charts I want. Come on. Sorry, I've got like 5 split screens going on right now. Can't find my charts. I might have exited them out of them. That's okay. I'm just gonna keep going. So the small intestine zigzags on top of the shoulder blade. And so that was really on fire for Casey. And so when we have small intestine flaring up, that is burnout. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Cannot get these to like flip screens for me. Hold on. I'm just going to exit out of a bunch of stuff. Here we go. I think I got it. There we go. Okay. So small intestine is burnout and depression and finding your passion. So when Casey is literally going through transition, she's quitting her nannying job. She is re-sparked with her passion. She's teaching yoga again. And so not only are we going to bring up her water element, it's going to help control this fire a little bit better because it's just muddy. There's nothing going on. So as we bring the water up, it will help flow that fire. And I know that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like if you're already burned out and you add more water, you're just going to be more depleted. But you can think of it as we are watering the earth so that the trees can grow so that we have something to burn.
Mm-hmm.
So when we connect in with the fire, we ask the questions, what is creating burnout? What is your passion? And how do you feel about yourself? Like, how are you defining yourself? And I know, Casey, you got ADHD, right? Or no?
Not diagnosed.
Not diagnosed. But hyperactive, right? Like you're go, 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 go till you crash.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So her fire element is already inflamed, which makes sense of why she needs a little bit more water. Now, if she had like low energy, poor self-esteem, lacking purpose, you can definitely have like a yin yang aspect going on. You can have a both. It just depends on what scenario you are in life. Like, are you playing the mom role now? Are you alone? Are you at work? Like you can have a yin yang factor because again, other people's energy will affect your imbalances. So don't get so stuck in it has to be one or the other. This is where the elemental approach comes in because we're not trying to balance everything at once. We're trying to balance one thing and then see how it shifts the other things. So when we do these elemental charts, this is just awareness of where we need to go. We don't need to fix it all right now. So at the end of her session, she's only working this water, but I'm giving the chart the whole explanation so she knows where she's going to go and obviously what she might expect to shift to in the future. So then the last meridians that we tied in on was the large intestine. And this is where you had your hands in your face the other day, I think, when I was talking.
Yeah.
So the large intestine, and like before you came to work for the studio, I think you were literally like, I don't know what to do with my life. Like I'm just stuck. I don't know what decisions to make. I don't know where to go, which is also water, right? Stuck potential, water. But also if you're faced to make a decision, indecision. Like this is like, I'm just going to do what makes sense for what's helpful, right?
Yeah.
So it puts you in an excess category here. And we get into excess categories because of childhood space. So even though she's really balanced in her earth element right now, she doesn't have that all the time. So these coping mechanisms in the air element are still going to be there.
Yeah.
So she has to combat, am I being a good wife? Or am I being a people pleaser because I am needing love and affection, but I don't know how to communicate that? And that's where the burnout comes from. If we're overly helpful and people pleasing to receive our love, we're just going to get burned out because it's so much easier to just be like, I really need a hug instead of doing tasks to receive that love.
Mhm.
So having that excess air element, we go into coping skills. And this is what I would say with a client, like, let's look at your coping skills of what you didn't have as a child. Like, how could you reparent? If you were your own parent right now, how would you parent yourself? And what would that love and affection look like? Because that's going to be your safety.
That's literally what I'm doing right now. I'm like sort of doing it through my kid because I'm like, I don't want to screw you up like this.
Yeah. And so generational lining up, right? So
Yeah.
we are stopping the generational trauma at Casey so she doesn't pass it down towards the next one. So if
Yeah.
we can reparent ourselves, we can learn better coping skills. And that will help balance the whole chart. So
Yeah.
I would say, you know, if we were do two different charts for Casey, one where she's here right now, so where she's 26. Is that what you
Yeah.
are? Okay, 26. Yeah.
Yeah.
26.
Think about it. You have mom brain.
So at 26, she feels really secure and safe, but at 7 and 8, she didn't. So what coping skills came into play at 7 and 8 to make that deficiency?
I didn't remember anything until I was 23.
So numbing out. That's going to be that coping skill.
We're not going to remember that.
Yeah. So I encourage every practitioner to kind of get this type of format down, and it's going to be really gray at first. You're going to be like, everybody's yin and yang, or also pay attention to, like, are you influencing the grid? Are you influencing it based on your own imbalances and what you're seeing? How do we get to that loving, caring, compassionate space without bringing in our own junk? So part of your homework, and we'll touch base on this more on Wednesday, but go ahead and print like 4 or 5 of these off, or 6 or 7 or 20, I don't care. Because your homework is going to be talk to 5 people.
Okay.
And see if you can identify their imbalances. And then we will just pick a couple of them to go over via Zoom. And then when we're in person, this starts to make way more sense. And the last group that went through training, they said it was way easier to understand all of this when they had the whiteboard in front of them. And I was literally just picking and picking and picking and picking. So if this is still really confusing, it's okay. It gets better. It's just, how many times can we throw it into the nervous system before it sticks? So Casey, your homework is water. Flow into that water space. And
I
also,
wrote, like, when we learned water, I said in my notebook, I think I'm deficient in water.
So Melissa, we can do an imbalance chart of yours tomorrow if you want. Even though you didn't have a Thai session, that's the beauty of this elemental practice. You don't have to give Thai to be able to fix or figure out the imbalance system. Like Casey could have just talked to me and I would have been fine. But it was really, really helpful to know the severity of that space behind the heart. Because I might have pulled her into the earth a little bit more just because of the lung meridian, like the codependence, like the childhood stuff, right? Not realizing how bad the water was numbed out.
Do you want me to ask? So I see Mary at Sanzines. So do you want me to ask her what her thought on it?
Yeah, go for it.
She'll probably be like, yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I'll have to check her out because I don't think I know her as a Thai practitioner. So I don't know what lineage. Does she talk about the meridians and stuff like this too?
Sometimes what we've been kind of working on, we kind of flip flop. Like sometimes we'll do more body work and sometimes we'll talk more.
Yeah.
So she's I don't know, she does a lot of crystal work too,
Yeah.
and that is helpful. That's been something that's been really helpful
Yeah,
for me. But it really just depends on the tangent that we
for sure.
go
Yeah,
on
for
as to what
sure.
she talks about with me.
Yeah. And since you already get tight, you can probably even identify like this section of the body is really tight, this section's really tight, this is really painful. So tomorrow when we kind of dissect stuff, we can talk about that and it'll be perfect because we'll have all 5 elements covered by then.
Okay.
So yeah. Any questions before we sign off tonight? I actually like utilized almost all of our time today.
No questions now. There's probably some, but I'll
That's
ask
okay.
tomorrow.
That's okay. You guys have been great. We'll do space tomorrow, and then I can't remember what our agenda is for Wednesday, but I obviously will get there when we get there.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. Enjoy 15 minutes of just peace and quiet. If you want to go back to your bolsters, go for it.
Thank you.
All right. See you guys tomorrow.
Bye.
ya.
Good night.